Welcome, everyone, to another showing of Black Men Speak. I'm your co host, DJR Stewart.
And I'm your co-host, Tommy D. Duncan III, otherwise known as TD3. Jimmy, it is Wednesday, February the 8th, 2023. Jimmy, if it's Wednesday night.
It's Black Men Speak. And
Yes,
so,
sir.
Tom, let's give a big shout out to Liquid for providing our theme music. And for all of those watching or will watch, please hit that notification button, subscribe to our channel, and spread the word as we try to grow show our followers this year. And Tom, with that being said, it looks like we have another interesting, fascinating night. And let me say this before we get started. This is the most progressive information show dealing with black issues on the internet. And as Keisha Jones would say, we are not for play.
You are
So,
right.
Tom, let's get into our topics and let's get started and do what we do.
All right, Jimmy, before we get started, do we have the chat line on? And I am hoping that everything that we have to talk about this evening, that we'll have a lot of good information on the chat line coming in. And of course, folks, as always, do feel free to call in and share your thoughts or ask any questions on what we're going to be discussing tonight, Jimmy, because we have a jam-packed show tonight. Jimmy, we are going to do a few historical spotlights, starting off with the first Black millionaires on U.S. soil. The first Black female millionaires. We are going to talk a little bit about some very interesting things that are historical, even though that they're more new. We're going to talk a little bit about Miss Opal Lee, who is considered to be the grandmother of Juneteenth, who we talked about during one of our prior shows and the history behind that. We are going to talk about and give an update on the latest in the Haitian president's murder and what's going on there in Haiti. Interesting news coming from the UN and now from Jamaica. We are going to do a follow-up on one of our prior shows. We talked about, Jen, I don't know how many months ago that was, about literally just last month, talking about the lack of head coaches in the NFL. And we want to give an update on Brian Flores, who just recently got a DC position at the Minnesota Vikings.
Congratulations, Flores.
Yeah, just within the last week, of course, we have a couple of milestones with the great Beyonce and LeBron James. A 9-year-old Jimmy who graduated high school. We got to talk a little bit more about this young man. And then we'll talk briefly about our thoughts or lack thereof on the most recent State of the Union address, Jimmy. I think that should hopefully get us through this hour. I'm hoping we can get through all of it.
Yeah. And before we get started, Tom, update the phone line. It's currently not working. It is in the process of being ported from the carrier that is with. I'm porting it back to MOCC Telecom. So that's not completed yet, Tom. So you won't be able to call in, but the chat line, the text line is open. So you can text your messages to us, and we'll be glad to share those. Hear what you have to say. And the phone line will be back on next week. That process should be completed next week.
All right, Jimmy. Well, we have a lot to cover tonight.
We have a lot to cover.
Where do you want to get started? Because we have a lot to deal
with. Like Tom Cruise was saying, I forget what the movie was, but show me the money. Let's start with the money.
All right. Very good. In that case, Jimmy, let's start off. You had a historical figure, and then also had one that I want to talk about briefly, who were among the first Black women in the United States to become millionaires, very wealthy in their own right, especially during that period of time. So let's start off with our Black History moment. You know, we do Black History all year, but we understand this is February, so we got to make sure that we feed the folks who want to be fed during this month, even though we do this type of feeding all year.
That's true.
So, Jimmy, you want to talk about Miss Sarah Rector, or I can talk about Mary Ellen Pleasant?
Yes. And so the way this came about, Tom, is that I ran across this video. I think it was a short or an article, and it was really talking about the first black millionaire, or the first black woman millionaire. And I thought Madam G. C.J. Walker was the first black millionaire, period, a man or a woman. And so as I'm looking into this more, like, wait a minute, I never heard of this person, this young lady. And then I decided to do a Google search, and I found a few references, Tom, to the first black millionaire. So I was hoping maybe we could settle this tonight as to who was actually the first black millionaire.
Gotcha. I understand. Well, I'll let you start off, and then we'll go from there, and then we'll get it figured out.
So the young lady that I added to the list, and I don't have her. I don't have my cheat sheet in front of me, but I believe her background and story was the time she inherited some land, and I believe in Oklahoma, over 100 acres or 1,000 acres. It was quite a bit of land, and they discovered all on the land. Standard Oil Company discovered all on the land, and of course that led to her with the oil rights and royalties off the oil, becoming a millionaire, or at least her worth was a millionaire.
Mm-hmm.
It was over $1 million. So, and so she was being cited as being the first black. So it was young lady Sarah Rector, I believe.
Yes.
Okay, as being the officially the first black millionaire. But like I said, once I did a Google search on it, I found a few different people who were also given that same title.
Gotcha, Jimmy. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit for our audience today about Miss Mary Ellen Pleasant. She was born in 1814 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Jimmy. She was born to she was born free. Now, this is the interesting thing. She was born
free during slavery.
She was born free during the time of slavery in Philly, which at that time was not a slave state. Her father was Native American, or at least part Native American, the Kanaka tribe, and her mother was a black woman from Louisiana. So she may have been a little bit mixed. And at a very early age, because they didn't have schools in Philadelphia, even though it was a free state where black children could get their education, they sent her to Nantucket, Massachusetts, to live with, I guess, who they thought was some friends of theirs, a rich white family called the Hussies. But when she got there, after her father sent her there to Massachusetts, again, parents lived in Philly, the friends of the family lived in Massachusetts. Instead of putting her in school, which the father gave them money to put her in school, they put her to work at their store. And she was, of course, very young at this time. She wasn't even a teenager yet. But what she did, Jimmy, is she took lemons and made lemonade out of it. She learned to read and write on her own time, even though she wasn't put in school. She not just worked in that business that the white family had, but she learned about how to run a business. And she actually took note as to, while she was sweeping the floor and doing other things of that nature, how the family was running the business. So, Jimmy, at a very young age, she was very precocious. She learned about not just financial capital and how to run a business, but she learned about human capital.
And Tom, that's a lesson for all of us. Don't go to work for a paycheck. I know that's part of the deal. You exchange your time and knowledge and skills for a paycheck, for money. But on every job that you work, you should also go there and try to learn as much as you can about that business, like this young lady did.
Gotcha. So she was in Boston. Again, she didn't go to formal education, but she learned her education through working. And she eventually moved to from Nantucket to Boston when she got old enough to take care of herself, and then ultimately moved to California. She was married twice. She benefited a little bit from the estates from her first husband, who died while he was relatively young. But one of the things that he promised her, because he actually he was a fair skinned gentleman, and he would actually buy slaves and then set them free. And he promised her to take the money that he was leaving her and to help do the same thing, which she helped do. But Jimmy, what she ended up doing is she really put this on steroids, and she, by herself, proclaimed U.S. Census identification, claimed herself to be a capitalist by profession. So she became a businesswoman. She moved from Massachusetts to California during the peak of the gold rush. And so she invested some of her money in businesses during the gold rush and mining gold, made a ton of money there, Jimmy. She ultimately built a foundation of wealth, became a financier. She opened a bank. She actually helped support John Brown, who was one of the few white men in history, Jimmy, who actually put their life literally on the line in order to help Africans get their freedom.
Yes.
She opened boarding houses, laundromats, well, not laundromats in the sense that we call them, but washing houses, and even opened some brothels, Jimmy. So she was a capitalist. She was about what was going to make the money and what was going to help people. She was a co-founder of a bank in California, opened some restaurants, Jimmy, and ultimately she ended up dying in 1904.
Okay.
But at the height of her wealth, Jimmy, she was literally worth over $1 million as a Black woman. And then when she did die in 1904, her estate was worth $600,000 at that time, Jimmy, which is estimated to
Which
be
is a lot of money.
over 16 million. That would be worth over 16 million now, but that was not the peak of her wealth. When she died, she had what would be equivalent of over $16 million in her estate today.
Well, Tom, a couple of things you mentioned there worth noting. One is that she was co-founder of a bank, which is amazing. That once again, I'm always admire our ancestors, Tom, for the things that they've done during a period of time when this nation was not very friendly or kind to our people. And for us today to hear people, when I hear people complain and cry about how hard it is to do anything, and how the country is forever pushing you back, I'm always reminded that there are people who came before us who had much tougher times and could still got things done. Say, Tom, does that echo on my side or?
I don't hear an echo.
Oh, okay.
I don't hear an echo.
And so, this is this is always amazing when I hear about our ancestors who've done great things. So for her to have established foundations, to co-found a bank, and open up restaurants, I mean, basically, there was a need to provide goods and services during the gold rush, and it sounded like she was in the right place at the right time with some business sense and a little bit of money to take advantage of the situation. Good for her.
And Jimmy, more so than anything else, again, she was not formally educated. She did not get a college degree. She did this on sheer work and grit and smarts. And I'm talking about street smarts, not book smarts. But if you want to learn a little bit more about Mary Ellen Pleasant, Google her. There is a great book, Jimmy, that we've read called Black Fortunes, written by Shamari Wills. So for those out there who want to read a great book on some of the first Black millionaires in this country, Black Fortunes by Shamari Wills. Shamari Wills, Wills. I would highly recommend you getting that. Anybody who has a young person, who has a child, niece, nephew, I would highly recommend that you invest in that book. Don't just get it from the library, buy it.
And if you believe that your plight in life is to be poor, then yes, read the book and allow yourself to be motivated and inspired by others who came before you. And if they could do it, you could certainly find a way to do it.
All right, Jimmy. That is what we have today for our Black History moment. But we will also talk about another sojourner in the fight for justice. Really, I think unfortunately, Jimmy, probably a underrepresented current living legend in our midst, Jimmy, who is actually local to the DFW area, Miss Opal Lee, who is considered to be the grandmother of the Juneteenth, what we now
Congratulations to
as the Juneteenth holiday, Jimmy. For those of you who may not know this, I just found out that she is going to be now, her image is going to be in the state capitol, recognizing her as a pioneer in civil rights, human rights, and freedoms in this country. But she will have her image and her portrait in Austin, Texas now, which our friend brother Asar, if he's here tonight, which I'm pretty sure he is here tonight, he needs to go check that out because that is a living legend. But she is considered to be the grandmother of Juneteenth, Jimmy. She has fought for decades to recognize
have it recognized by the state. In time, she should be memorialized.
Not by she's going to be recognized by the state, but I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jimmy.
I was just saying that the recognition is well deserved for her body of work over her lifetime. So I'm glad to see that this is finally happening.
Gotcha. Okay, so I'm getting some information that's feedback on your audio, but not mine. So it may be on your side, Jimmy.
Okay.
But we'll keep going. But any rate, Miss Opal Lee, a native of Fort Worth, Texas, who has fought for decades for the recognition for Juneteenth to be celebrated as a federal holiday. And of course, as we know, last year, it was finally signed into law by Joe Biden. And this is the first federal holiday, Jimmy, since MLK Day was recognized in 1983. But all that being said, Jimmy, is that she has been fighting the fight for justice for everybody, Jimmy, for decades upon decades. Her home was set on fire by a mob in 1939, a white mob in 1939, which unfortunately, did not push her resolve. But for years, Jimmy, literally, she has walked 2.5 miles on Juneteenth, raising awareness to the significance of the Juneteenth holiday. And she's walking 2.5 miles to recognize the 2.5 years that it took from the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation to the Union troops finally getting to Galveston and announcing to the last of the slaves, of the enslaved Africans, that they had been freed, who, of course, they didn't know they had been freed until 2.5 years later.
They didn't know, but there are many who did know, who allow the situation to persist. I know we didn't have information sharing like we have today, but there were telegraphs, there were newspapers, so the information could get around the country fairly quickly. So it wasn't like this had to have taken 2 years or 2+ years. It didn't have to take that long, but those who were benefiting from slavery, who certainly didn't want to know, this was convenient for them to allow this to go on, knowing that pretty much slavery was coming to an end. So it's almost like if you stick your head in the sand and pretend that it doesn't exist, maybe, just maybe, they'll look the other way and nobody will notice.
You're right, Jimmy. And at the end of the day, whether it's then or now, it's all about economics. It's all about money. It's all about the extraction of wealth, free labor at that point in time for the building of the economy.
Yes, when you get free labor, Tom, I don't know if it gets it any better than that. So, especially if you made payroll and had to write a check to someone, to an employee, you come to appreciate free labor. So I'm pretty sure I can see my Rottweiler puppy here coming for some attention.
Absolutely. But Sister Opal Lee is,
congratulations.
I believe 94, maybe 95 years old, Jimmy, and still trailblazing, Jimmy, still out there fighting the good fight.
Was there a ceremony for this, or
it was today? It was today.
Oh, today.
Yes.
Okay. So next time we go to Austin, we should be able to find her portrait in the State House. Where's it going to be placed?
I'm not exactly sure where exactly it's going to be placed, but I know it's going to, I believe it's supposed to be done today.
Okay. Well, let's see if we can find more information, and maybe next week we'll follow up with a little more information as to its location.
Yeah, Jimmy. And all that being said, we want to again congratulate Sister Opal Lee and what she's done, Jimmy. And in 2016, she walked 1,400 miles from Fort Worth to Washington, D.C., over 4 months to plead her case. And finally, in 2022, it happened. So, I mean, that's when you want to talk about perseverance and persistence.
Tom, 1,400 out there at her age,
Yes,
and some of these young people can't get off the couch and walk around the corner.
yes.
Wow.
Yeah, Jimmy. So, all that being said, we want to elevate and celebrate Sister Opal Lee for fighting for all of us, and making amends for our ancestors and everything that they had to go through to recognize our Freedom Day.
Yes. Okay.
All right, Jimmy. Next, we have, man, this is another interesting story that I don't know if everybody has heard about it, but we've got to also share some news that I found just absolutely brilliant. There is a 9-year-old, Jimmy.
9 years old, Tom.
Who graduated high school just recently. David.
Not 19, 9 years old. That number that comes after 8, as in third, fourth grade, 9 years old.
Yep. But again, congratulations to the parents and family of David Balogun, a 9-year-old who graduated and received his diploma from Reach Cyber Charter School, making him one of the youngest, I believe the second youngest young person to graduate from high school. This young man is absolutely brilliant. I'm just telling you, watch out for this young man. I mean, to your point, Jimmy, in some of the areas that you love, he loves science, chemistry, nuclear chemistry, computer development, and this guy wants to be an astrophysicist at 9 years old. He wants
to my desire growing up also. Tom, this just goes to show, and we've talked about this before, this is why we cannot allow the public school system to miseducate and shortchange our children. Do not believe the hype about what our kids can and cannot do. There's no limit to what our kids can do, and they're simply motivated for success. Black kids, black people are some of the smartest people in the world. And so with that being said, don't let anyone convince you that your child has a learning problem or can't learn or they're lazy or don't want to do the work. Your children can be as smart as they want to be, as smart as you motivate them and push them to be. So do not ever shortchange or underestimate what your kids can get done. This just goes to show, Tom, with the right motivation, this shouldn't even be a story. This should be the norm in the black community. We should have other kids who are graduating at, maybe not at 9 years old, but definitely in their teen years for certain. It shouldn't take 12 years to get through a high school or an education, to get your high school diploma. There's no reason why some of that should be accelerated if your kids are focusing more on education and you're motivating them for that as opposed to coming home and playing video games. You're taking the summers off.
Yeah, that's very true, Jimmy. I mean, the thing about it is, I think, fortunate thing for him, from what I could tell, the optics of it, he came from not wealthy at all, but came from a supportive family environment. Looked like he had his dad and his mom there with him. And so regardless of what the circumstances are, whether you have a tough environment or you have a strong family environment, the thing that stands out about this young man is that he dreamed big and thought big. And I think that you will enjoy the fact that he is actually a partner. I don't know if there's a junior Mansa Musa group, but he is a part of the Mansa Musa Society.
Okay.
So he is a part of that group, which of course are among the smartest people in America, Jimmy. He advanced from the 3rd grade to the 12th grade. And again, mind you, he was homeschooled in 3 years. From 3rd grade to 12th grade in
Wow.
30 years. He is he wants to create a hologram computer, and he is refuting the Big Bang Theory. So this guy has a lot of stuff going on at 9 years old, and his family is now, looking at and of course considering colleges. I believe he's also gotten a lot of hours with community college, Jimmy. So this is going to be someone that we're going to see in the future who is going to do extremely big things. And of course, we are wishing him and his family the absolute best because these are the type of things, Jimmy, that you're not going to find as much on the news.
Well, Tom, he's definitely on the right track, and let me say that he is correct because now with the launching of the James Webb Telescope, now there's evidence to suggest that we have to rethink our thinking on the Big Bang. So I would encourage him to continue to stay with it. Being an astrophysicist was always my dream job. It just doesn't pay that much, so I went into computer science instead. Looking back on it, I wish I had stayed with my passion. So, but I am very proud of this young man, and come on, guys, let's make him the norm rather than the exception, and make him the rule. Other schools can do this also. So this just goes to show what our young kids are capable of doing. So now that he's done it, hopefully we broke the mold. Tom, and there should be others coming up behind him doing the same thing.
Absolutely. We want to thank Miss Elisa Patterson, one of our
Yes. Hey,
thank you for joining us tonight, Miss Elisa. I hope everything is going well. I think she is probably out there fighting the good fights in the courtrooms in Travis County. So we want to thank you for joining us tonight. We also want to thank Brother Asar Kabalon, one of our strong supporters as well. So again, thank you for joining us. Thank you for supporting us, Jimmy. Since the phone line is not open tonight, do please just give us some feedback on your chat because we have a couple of other stories that we're going to talk about tonight that we want people's feedback on. So bring the fire on the chat line today because we still have about a half an hour left, Jimmy, and we still have a few other things to talk about that we want our community's feedback from. So let's continue to talk, Jimmy. Let's have a couple of current event stories that I think we should definitely get some feedback. For those who are sports fans, we want to congratulate LeBron James, who has now surpassed the NBA all-time leading scorer list above the great Kareem Abdul Jabbar, Jimmy.
Yes, Tom. Great accomplishment. Don't want to take anything away from LeBron, and well deserved. But I can't. I don't know how many more years he's played longer than Kareem because LeBron is kind of getting up there in years, so he's not a spring chicken anymore. But yeah, congratulations to him for such an accomplishment. You certainly can't score that many points unless you've had a very long career.
And Jimmy, I think and again, to the James family, his mother, his family, his wife, everyone, great shout outs. I don't know what his score is right now. I don't know if they are playing tonight, but I know when he broke the record, it was 38,388 points. A lot of scoring, Jimmy. And for you to have eclipsed that, considering how long Kareem played, I forgot which coach started this, Jimmy, but I know it's kind of attributed to Bill Belichick. He says one of your greatest abilities is your availability. And he has,
right.
Though he has had some injuries in his career, when you look at the amount of time and money that he invests in his physical health, his diet, working out, Jimmy, and making sure that he could even be around this long in order to eclipse this major milestone in sports history.
Right. Well, Tom, I think we could say that about both LeBron and Kareem because, Kareem played down the center position, a lot of banging, a lot of pushing, and for him to have played that long to score that many, over 38,000 points, meant that he had to not have endured that many injuries to be able to play that long. So congratulations to LeBron also. I will say this about LeBron. He's 6'9". I don't know how much he weighs, but I know he's fairly strong and keeps himself in shape. But Tom, if you ever watch him play, he takes a lot of contact also.
Yes.
And I'll say this: I'm not a big LeBron fan, but he does not get the calls that you normally expect a person of his stature to be able to get. I know there are all these comparisons about who's the GOAT either between him and Michael Jordan.
Him and Michael Jordan, MJ.
Of course, of course. When you have 6 rings, I think that sells the score.
If you got 6 rings, okay, you got 6 rings, but what about 11?
Sure. and so you've never lost.
But Bill Russell, God rest his soul, Bill Russell had 11.
He did, Tom. Different era back then, of course. You know what? This is funny about Bill Russell. I'm thinking, I don't know what year it was. It was either maybe 64, 65. It was one of those years he won MVP, Tom. But, we normally think of Bill Russell as a defensive specialist and a rebounder. But, Tom, I believe, not Kareem, who's the other? Will Chamberlain averaged over 40 points that year. And Oscar Robinson averaged a triple-double. But Russell ended up winning the MVP, Tom. But he averaged 23 points a game and over 20 rebounds, plus block shots. And so it's amazing that you're considered a defensive specialist when you average 23 points a game, Tom. But when you're going up against scores like Will Chamberlain and Oscar Robinson, then I can see your lousy 23 points being considered nothing compared to the block shots and rebounds, plus 11 championships. It doesn't hurt.
Yeah, Jimmy. I mean, just your point, with the amount of points that he scored, that's just like Dennis Rodman. I mean, Dennis Rodman obviously doesn't have the height that a Bill Russell would, but that's like Dennis Rodman averaging 20-plus points a game, which never happened. I mean, again, the only other person which is kind of on some people's Mount Rushmore, Jimmy, is Shaquille O'Neal, because obviously he was probably the greatest, one of the greatest big men, if not the greatest
definitely
in the game of basketball, when you consider, his defensive prowess just because of his size, and then he was tearing down goalposts every place he went, Jimmy. So, again, we don't want to get too far off the track, but when we look at LeBron, I think now definitely submitting him on that Mount Rushmore of the NBA, for sure. I think for most people he was already there, but if there was any doubt, this has to put him on the Mount Rushmore of NBA.
He can be on the Mount Sweet, Tom, but he's still not the GOAT. So, yeah. And I'm a big Michael Jordan fan, so it even pains me to give him the title. I was a big Rector fan growing up in Magic. So, but yes, I do have to give Michael his due. That's when you watch him play, he played the game like nobody else played it, Tom. Even to this day, I mean, there may be those who think they have his skills, but there was just something magical about it. It was something, he was almost like a Michael Jackson, Tom. There was just something magical about the way this guy performed and executed his skill and art. So
I would agree with you.
To the other great notable.
And maybe we need to reach, Brother Asar said MJ period in terms of the GOAT.
For sure. That, no argument for me on that one. And like I said, I'm not a big fan of Michael, but I respect the talent and the way he carried himself on the court and the way he played the game. There will not be another like him in my lifetime.
I would agree, Jimmy. And, I would have to say I wasn't a big fan of MJ when he was playing until the very end of his career, Jimmy. But I just had to concede, especially after he came back from the stint in baseball, and to come back and win 3 more.
Right.
3 more after he was out of the game for a couple of years. Jimmy, you just had to concede that this man is the best player And LeBron definitely, if he's not the best, he is definitely one of the best, in the game.
Definitely one of the best all time. But yeah, MJ is certainly the GOAT. And certainly, Chicago, Michael Jordan and his Bulls, beat my Lakers last championship during that period that Magic was in. Of course, they go down in defeat to MJ and the Bulls. So another reason for me not to like the Bulls or Michael Jordan.
Gotcha. All right, now let's go to another great. The one Miss Beyonce Knowles, who, for those of you like me who doesn't watch the Grammys, Emmys, Tonys, or all of those other so-called shows, she did win her 32nd Grammy this past weekend, making her the GOAT of Grammys. She has won more Grammys than any other entertainer.
I don't follow the Grammys, Oscars. I mean, I don't keep up with that nonsense. But 32, I was like, wait a minute. She had to have an enormous body of work to win that many Grammys. Because even if, has she been performing 32 years?
No, she's 41 years old, Jimmy, so she can't. No, maybe she was playing at the piano when she was a little girl, but she's only 41 years old to have won 32 Grammys. That's almost one Grammy per year of her life, Jimmy.
I know, Tom. That's amazing. When I saw that number 32, I was like, wow, that's a lot. I'm thinking, unless you're winning Grammys every year. I didn't know she's even putting out a record, their albums every year on that much of that consistent of a basis. But yeah, that's an enormous accomplishment on her part. Congratulations to her. She's a very talented young lady. In time for her to have started off with Destiny Child in a group with a girls group, I'm assuming that these 32 Grammys were solo wins, not Destiny Child wins.
Correct. And she won her 32nd one on Best Dance and Electronic Album for Renaissance.
Okay.
And again, this was this past weekend. Again, when the Grammys, my mom started watching the Grammys, and when she turned it on, I walked out, kept moving. I still go visit my mom on the weekends, and so yeah, when she started turning the Grammys, I was like, all right, Mom, I'll see y'all later. Y'all enjoy. I cannot get into these shows because of things that is probably beyond the scope of the conversation for today. But all that being said, yeah, Miss Elisa said, yes, she's killing it. I don't know what everybody's
and I'm going to go back and revisit. I think I have maybe 2 of her songs that I know of in my library. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to have to revisit. But most of my library is back in the 60s and 70s. So it's hard for modern day artists to make it into my library of oldies.
Gotcha. And again, while we're a little bit over halfway through the show, if you haven't, hit that like button. And we need to hear from you. So again, for all the sisters out there, Beyonce, what is your favorite Beyonce track? Give it to us. What is your favorite Beyonce track? We're going to have an ode to Miss Beyonce. I don't know if there's anybody out there who's a part of the Beehive. I think they call it the Beehive, Jimmy.
Yes, I've heard that term.
Exactly. That's a part of her fan base. They call it the Beehive.
So, yes, congratulations to her. Well-deserved. And Tom, that may be another record that and it sounds like she's not done at 41. She's still have lots of years left. So that 32 could easily be 42.
Gotcha. All righty. So, again, congratulations to her and her family again. She is, among the greats. And, I would say, she is, one of the most celebrated. Some might argue most talented, but she is one of the most celebrated artists, one of the most celebrated performers. When you look at the long line of sisters, who have been out there making it happen, really getting beyond what we might call the hurdles for Black folks in entertainment, Black women in particular in entertainment, just her longevity. It's very, very difficult to get to that pinnacle of success.
And Tom, we have Ms. Bonnie and Ms. Audrey have joined. Let's give them a shout out.
Yeah, so welcome, Miss Audrey, Miss Audrey Booker. Welcome, Miss Bosie Scott. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Black Men Speak. I don't know if y'all are Beyonce fans, but if you are, let us know what your favorite Beyonce track is, and we're going to transition to our next story. Oh, Elisa, let us know what your favorite Beyonce track is, if you have one. And I don't want to hear all the single ladies, not that one. All right, Jimmy, let's keep it moving. Next, and we have covered quite a bit, Jimmy. Let's talk a little bit about a follow-up from a story that we did last week and we've done a couple of times, and that's dealing with the NFL while we're still talking about sport. We talked about why there is such a dearth of Black head coaches in the NFL, in a league that has been overwhelmingly Black.
70+% Black, yes.
It's the 70s, I think, give or take.
Yes.
Since the 70s, you've had, an overwhelming number of Black players in the NFL. But when you look at the number of head coaches, when you look at the number of offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators that typically lead the head coaches, crickets. Right now, we technically have 3 Black head coaches in the NFL, and that's only because the D'Amico Ryans, who was the defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers, just got hired by the Houston Texans. We wish you the best of luck. Obviously, we have the long-term head coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Mike Tomlin, who is he is the second longest tenured coach after Bill Belichick, I believe it is, in the NFL. So we got to, make sure that we continue to give him a shout out, Jimmy. And who is
Tom? But Mike. There are people calling for Mike's job every year. Bill Belichick can have a bad year, an off year, and no one's calling for his job. But yeah, of course, he has a great body of work to go with that. I have a theory, Tom, that, and I've said this with basketball, and it may be applicable to football also, is that maybe the problem is that the Black players are just too good. I've noticed that in basketball, great players really don't turn into great coaches. Larry Bird was a lousy coach in Indiana. Magic Johnson didn't do a good job at coaching. Even the great Bill Russell. These guys took management jobs. They did okay there, but as coaches, Michael Jordan trying to coach, his team, and I think the greats have a hard time transitioning what they know and their skills to someone else. But average mediocre players who have some insight about the game generally make better coaches than the ones who are great at it. So maybe the Black athletes in football are just too good at what they do to be really good head coaches. So maybe what we need, Tom, is a third string, 7th round draft pick at the end of the bench who quality never gets a chance to get on the field to then go into coaching and to open the doors for other Black coaches.
Jimmy, I think it's completely political. With a few exceptions, Jimmy, when we talk about the head coaching position in the NFL, if we look at folks who have literally no head coaching experience or minimal head coaching experience, who can get head coaching job because they're the owner's boy or friend or whatever the case is. I'm not going to call out any names, but we know who they are because we've seen something in the last.
Boys network.
No head coach, not even high school head coach who got a head coaching job in the NFL, or someone who was mediocre at best in college. We're not going to call out his name because he just got fired, so you can figure out who that is. But you talk about all of the folks who don't even get a chance. They don't even get a sniff.
Yeah, unfortunately, the black coaches, coordinators, position coaches, they have to be great at what they do. When they're given chances, they have to be on really good teams. They have to really be outstanding and to be noticed, Tom. And even then, boy, that window for them is very small.
It is. You have one losing. You have one losing season, and you're gone.
If you don't hit that grand slam home run your first year, you're pretty much done after that.
Right.
You can only imagine where Mike would be now. I don't think he'd be in football if he didn't. I mean, every year his job is on the line. He has to have winning seasons every year. There's no taking a break. There's no rebuilding, which I believe they're now in that position where they're going to have to rebuild. They're so void of talent. But even with that being said, the expectation is for you to still put a winning product on the field. And if he doesn't put a winning product on the field and make the playoffs or compete for a championship, then he can find himself out of a job.
All right, you are correct. And so with that being said, D'Amico Wyans just earned a head coaching job at Houston. You have Brian Flores, who was the lead in the lawsuit against the NFL, who ended up getting an assistant coaching job with the Pittsburgh Steelers under Mike Tomlin, who now just got a DC or a defensive coordinator job at the Minnesota Vikings. The same Minnesota Vikings who pretty much own their division, but as soon as they hit the door, they hit the concrete, well, the grass.
Well, Tom, a lot of those wins in Minnesota were very shaky, and they were very close games. They were winning by field goals. Or
they got blown out by the Dallas Cowboys.
I was going to say, it's not like they were blowing teams out. So they beat the teams that mediocre teams that they were supposed to beat, pretty much like the Cowboys. They never had just overwhelming victories. And so I believe with that, they're probably going to have to show up that defense. And I'm pretty sure they're going to come back next year. And I wish them much success next year. I wish the Brian success in his new position. So if he can improve that defense, Tom, he may have a chance at becoming a head coach or interviewing for a head coaching position at some point.
He should. I believe that, unfortunately, with the Miami Dolphins, again, a political decision. They had him there. Obviously, there were some issues between, him and Tua Tagovailoa at quarterback right now. We'll see how that works out with the new coach, Jimmy. But with all that being said, we do wish Brian Flores the best of luck.
Congratulations to him.
We do pray for you that you will get a head coaching job. We understand that hope nor prayer is a strategy, but we've got to use leverage in order to get more black coaches into those positions, which is a tall order, Jimmy, because, again, owners, billionaires, the Billionaire Boys Club, it's more political than anything else. Very, very little based upon merit, but some folks always say based upon merit. But we can go ahead and move on, Jimmy. And I do want to acknowledge Willis. Welcome to Black Men Speak. We want to thank you for joining us tonight. Let us know what you say, what you think about what we're talking about. Feel free to comment in our chat section. And a follow-up from Ms. Bosie Scott and Ms. Audrey. They both said halo. And Bosie also said Bay. She likes Bay, which I've never heard of, but that lets you know how much I know about Beyonce's.
I don't keep up either, so.
Exactly. So, hey, for those of you out there, I'm going to have to look up Bay tonight. I'm going to have to look up Halo as well. So I'll know what those are looking like the next time we are on here. So we want to thank you. And let's move on, Jimmy. We have, I think, one or two more things that we want to share tonight. And first, we're going to start off with the State of the Union. We'll keep it relatively short because we have about 10 minutes left, and then we'll talk about what's going on in Haiti. For most folks, some of you may have watched the State of the Union last night. Some of you may not. I got a chance to listen to probably the last 45 or so minutes of it, Jimmy, as it pertains to black folk, which is what we're concerned about, what the messaging was, what the commitments were when it comes to Black America. What are your thoughts on it, Jimmy?
Well, Tom, I was very disappointed with the speech overall. I give it about a C+ at best. I mean, it was an hour and 20 minutes of just some bloviating about nothing really. This is an opportunity, Tom, to really talk about some things that you could do to bring the country together, to secure our border. You know, you talk about fentanyl, but you know, your policies allow drug smugglers to smuggle people and drugs into this country in record numbers. So you shouldn't brag about and boast on things that you haven't made better. The other thing, Tom, is that there's no follow-up mention on the billions of dollars that you promised and pledged to the African nation that in that congregation that came here just a month or two ago. Of course, there's no follow-up or mention on the $30 billion you took from the HBCUs, putting that money back. You know, you say that, you know, we have to invest in the American future, invest in education, but it seems like when you're adding trillions of dollars of new spending, and you can, the only place you can find to cut the budget is for the HBCUs. There's something wrong here, Tom. I'm not buying your phony baloney belief that you were trying to sell us on how you're friends to the black community, because you're not. So your actions speak louder than your phony words. So until I see more from this president and that administration to direct resources toward in the direction where we know they're most needed, then yeah, he will always get my scoring, Tom. So I think it was a waste of my hour and 20 minutes. Pretty much I was watching because I was curious to see what he's going to talk about, and I'm not surprised. I had hoped that the speech would be better than what it was, but I wasn't expecting much more than what he gave. Even giving him a C plus, I think is generous.
Yeah, Jimmy. I mean, I can't say that I'm too far off, you know, from you. I mean, wasn't really expecting a ton specifically, because I understand that it is a game of politics. And because now that the House is split, he doesn't have a lot of leverage. He talked, of course, a little bit about what was going on with the recent Tyree Nichols case, of course, and he had both of his parents there, his family there to acknowledge them. And I guess what I was looking for was a little bit more of a strategy or a commitment as to what he's going to do.
Correct.
Every week we look around and there's another brother who looks like, you know, you or me or somebody younger than us, unfortunately, in harm's way, and too many times not from just black on black crime, but blue on black crime. And the question is, what is the strategy? What are we going to do to fix this problem? Because again, I'm not saying that this doesn't happen to other folk, but when we look at the number of unarmed young and older black men who are dying for no good reason, Jimmy, you know, we've got to do something. But at the end of the day, we are not the legislators, and we don't have the biggest bully pulpit in the world. So I was expecting something a little bit more from that, but I do want to at least acknowledge that he had the parents there, which of course, if he did not, that would have been extremely bad. So he did what he had to do, but the type of commitment that he made, I didn't see that.
Your parents there. You talk about the issue. You speak a little bit about how you don't have to have a speech with your kids that black people have to have with their children, especially when they're going out into the world. Okay, you say these things, but then you don't follow up with any policy of, I'm going to get a commission together and study the issue. I'm going to sit down with Tim Scott and some other black leaders to talk about it and see what can be done. You say, so without absence of any positive policy or proposed policy, to me now it just comes across as though you're almost about it. You know, hey, you know, me and mine we don't have this problem. I don't have to have this talk. You know, for you and yours, you know, God, good luck to you. God help all of y'all, and I hope you don't have a negative encounter. So Tom, you know, we know what the conditions are. We talk about these things all the time. If you really want to help, sit down at the table with those who are going through it, and then whether the policies work or not, we'll never know, because these are all laboratories or social experiments. So let's put forth some policies, try different things out, look around the landscape and see what's working, and try to push those forward, and try to get rid of bad policies.
Well, you know, and at the end of the day, Jimmy, just like the strategy that he used in terms of getting the commitment, so-called, that Social Security, any changes or any elimination of Social Security was off the table.
Talking about cutting Social Security?
Exactly. No, wait a sec. But again, if he used that as his strategy to get a commitment, why couldn't he use that as a strategy to say, hey, we've got to get something done right now. We've got to get something done right now. And either you're for it or you're against it. Bottom line. But I didn't see that, and I would agree with you in terms of no policy, no commitment. I mean, we're ultimately talking about Black mothers here when you're talking about the number of Black men and the number of Black husbands who have lost their lives. I heard a little bit about debt relief. Not a whole lot in terms of what's next in terms of debt relief. Obviously, he's got to, reach across the aisle in order to make that happen. I don't know how that's going to happen. I know we're kind of on possibly different sides of that, Jimmy, but at the end of the day, it's some folks who don't want to see anybody else benefit when they don't realize that they benefit just as much. But that's another thing, Jimmy. And, I was one of the elephants in the room that is in a pandemic in this country that we still don't talk about is human trafficking. Human trafficking, which disproportionately affects our community as well. We've been beating on that drum for years and years and years, but we're not writing the legislation. We are not making the crimes for these types of egregious things, Jimmy. God forbid, if you can put hundreds of millions of dollars to send to Ukraine, but you cannot commit the resources to reduce the amount of human trafficking in our country, not just from over the world coming here, but within our countries, in our streets, in our neighborhoods.
But Tom, I think a lot of people are looking at this as if they don't want the trafficking. So you have to understand, Tom, that the Black population hasn't really changed very much since 1865.
Of course not.
At the end of slavery, we were 12.5% of the population. We're about 13% of the population now that we know of. So in 160 plus years, that percentage has not changed very much. And on top of that,
and that is by design.
That's by design. So you need to replace that population, Tom, because you can't count on Black people to grow their numbers.
Wait a minute, Jimmy.
What?
I mean, if they let everybody else in the world over the United States, but they make sure that folks from Haiti, they make sure that only a limited number of folks from the African continent, they don't let, of course, Cubans who happen to look Black as well, and or folks from Central and or South America. It's not just a matter of us not being able to regenerate and grow their population.
That's a political matter.
Immigration policy that's preventing that.
Right, that's a political matter. And if you look at the countries and the people, the dark-skinned people that you're talking about, you're generally talking about people who work hard, who have conservative values. And working hard and conservative values, especially when you're willing to work 2 or 3 jobs to make your ends meet, is not the profile that our open immigration policy is looking for. We're looking for people who are a little more desperate, who don't have the skills or the desire to do a great deal of work, who are looking for an easier road, who are going to be more dependent on government than anything else. Because if you trap those people, then guess what? You have their vote forever because they're never going to vote for a party that is opposed to them or the system that's supporting them. So Cubans, Haitians, generally Dominicans, generally people who work hard, multiple jobs, very conservative values, strong family values, generally vote politically when they do support a party, conservative parties. Tom, those are not the people. Those are the people who get pushed back as the boat is coming up on shore. The Coast Guard picks them up and take them back to their country.
That's interesting, Jimmy, because I thought this country was built on the values of hard work.
It is, Tom, and except when you need millions upon millions of people depending on government, and unfortunately, you look at the landscape. The Black middle class, even though it's not growing as fast as it should, they're still Black women being more educated, being more successful. Eventually, Tom, that success is going to translate into them adopting more conservative values. And we're looking at the money that they earn and saying, hey, I need to take advantage of some tax strategies here and keep my money as opposed to just giving it to government, especially when that money is going to take care of other people. So you tend to become more conservative as you become more successful in life. And I know that this wave of Black success with women is sort of a recent phenomenon in the last generation or two. But the trending time is going to suggest that we already know where it's going to end, that Black women slowly are going to become more conservative in life, and that conservative value is going to mean them switching parties and aligning more with the Republican Party than the Democrat Party. So the powers that be that control government now, these Democrat strongholds, are simply trying to protect their rear end, their rear ranks, by bringing in people that they know they can count on for the next 2, 3, 4 generations and beyond.
All right, Jimmy.
And that's another show. That's a very complex matter for us to try to solve in the next couple of minutes, Tom, because we're pretty much out of time.
And let's do a brief update, Jimmy,
Okay.
on the Haitian situation. Of course, we have been tracking that for some time now. As of course, most of you know, if you've been watching this show, there literally is I don't want to call it civil war per se. It's not very much of a war in Haiti right now, Jimmy. But you have gangs somewhere in the range of 200 gangs that are pretty much
totally control the country, Tom.
They're taking up pretty much control of the country. There are no more democratically elected leaders left, including the president, who unfortunately was murdered in 2021. All of the legislative branch, their terms have all expired. There are no more legislators in the country.
In elections, Tom. Nobody's running for office.
You have what some people call an illegitimate prime minister, who is the de facto leader of the country right now.
Sometimes somebody needs to step up and just take charge and assume responsibility for the country, and to organize whatever military or police force they have to combat the influence of the gangs.
Well, no one with that type of power really is showing the political will to do that. Certainly not the United States. Certainly not Canada. It's very interesting that the Jamaican Prime Minister, Andrew Holness, just announced that he's willing to send military over there in a multinational initiative in order to help neutralize the violence. Because, Jimmy, what you're looking at, kidnapping for extortion, murder.
Oh, kidnapping is a big source of money for them.
Of course, Jimmy. But at the end of the day, it comes down to resources. Some folks are pointing to the grab on the energy resources that they have over there. But the United Nations has been, talking about getting a multinational military force over there, Jimmy. It's just a very fragile situation because, unfortunately, when military forces have gone over there in the past, whether you're talking about the UN, whether you're talking about the U.S., unfortunately, all that seems to happen is you go over there with your guns, you end up impregnating a lot of little Haitian girls, and now you have a lot of multiracial children over there without getting everything done. And ultimately, Jimmy, there has to be a better solution that is Haitian-driven, not by the gangs per se, but by the people of Haiti that are going to neutralize what's going on. But unfortunately, Jimmy, the gangs have more access to advanced weapons than the national police does.
Well, Tom, we can pretty much give up on the U.S. or Canada getting involved unless we have an interest or a stake there, which we don't. It would be nice to think that maybe we would be in it for the sugar, but we have high fructose corn syrup that we use to sweeten our foods with instead of sugar. So unfortunately, we have nothing of interest in Haiti that we want. Except maybe they have nice beaches. So here's a suggestion, Tom, which is a little bit of a joke too. Maybe we take those gang members who are in prison. We have tons of them, and offer them some kind of deal that you can earn your freedom if you join the Freedom Relief Force we allow them to go to Haiti to combat the existing gangs that are there. So it'll be gang war, it'll be gang on gang, Tom, which is kind of what's happening already, where gangs are fighting for, battling each other for control. I would like to think that maybe our gangs with better equipment would be able to get rid of the local Haitian gangs.
Well, I would say this: whatever the solution is going to be, whenever it happens, it needs to be driven by the needs of the Haitian people. And I know that's a very novel idea.
They need to organize a force.
A democratic country that's driven by the interests of the people, but it has to be Haitian driven. The question is not wanting foreign intervention so that they can exploit and take advantage of the people and its resources. But, since Haiti achieved its independence, the first country to achieve its independence from being colonized by the French at that time, the French, supported by the U.S. and other Western countries, have penalized Haiti as being the first country to achieve its independence from being literally enslaved by putting them in a massive amount of debt that they were not able to get out to until the early 1900s, Jimmy. And so ultimately, they've got to become an independent country, but this has to be a global pandemic drive.
Black people cannot kill that many white people, especially women and children, and somehow be forgiven. That's
because who has the most weapons, who has the most gunpowder? Because if we look at the number of black women and children who have been killed,
no one counts those, Tom. In this particular case, when you're talking about gaining your independence from France and in retaliation for Napoleon sending his army to basically put you back into slavery. I mean, let's face it.
Correct.
They have won freedom, and Napoleon.
Otherwise, it's no. Y'all need to keep giving us our money.
Yeah. So, and it wasn't just the Haitians, Tom. I mean, Mexico was under debt also to the Spanish and the Portuguese. They went to war, fighting over money. So we know how that goes when you don't pay your debts. But basically, Napoleon was basically saying, "Hey, we're gonna restore order, put things back the way they were. It may not have been good for you, but it was good for us." So, and like I said, the retaliation by killing pretty much all the white people on the island, men, women, and children, except medical people. You don't wash that blood away that easily, Tom. I always not forgive you.
If you don't wash that blood away, if you don't wash that blood away easily, Jimmy, if we talk about the millions of Africans who have been killed, raped,
they don't count, Tom.
No, yes, it does count, Jimmy.
Well, it counts to us, Tom, but on the international stage, that blood doesn't count.
And that's what I'm saying. We have to make it count, and so
Correct.
we have to be a part of that solution. All that being said, Jimmy, we are a few minutes out of time, but I have enjoyed the conversation, Jimmy. I actually enjoy this format where we're hitting on several different topics. There's a lot of stuff going on, and I am looking forward to 2023. We want to thank Miss Elisa. We want to thank Miss Bosie. We want to thank Ms. Audrey K. And we want to thank Mr. Willis, for joining us tonight. We will be back next Wednesday, Jimmy. That will be by that time, February the 15th, I believe it is. Because, Jimmy, if it is Wednesday night,
it's Black Men Speak.
Good evening, everyone.